So, Kumpal, what are we going to be talking about today?
Let's talk about hotel deals, Kunop, and how to make a deal work in a pandemic.
Wonderful. So, in 2021, what transactions have you saw?
Yeah, according to our record, there were 17 transactions, about 23 hotel properties, and 3 portfolio sales. And as you can see up on the screen, Kimpton Samui was the largest single asset hotel transaction last year. It was sold by a domestic buyer to a Hong Kong buyer, and it was their first investment outside of Hong Kong and China. The Renaissance Samui was sold by Erawan to a Thai private family, together with the IBIS portfolios. What about on your end, Kap Kunop?
We were actually quite busy as well on the buy side advisory. We actually advised and assist a Middle Eastern group to invest into 40% share into Minor. Our services actually entail overseeing all the transaction, working with auditors as well as lawyers and the technical team during all the due diligence as well as the transfer of the properties. Any other transactions, Kumpal?
Yeah, the Citadines 23 here in Bangkok, which was sold by Boutique Corporation to a Thai private family. It was their first investment into hotel. The same way with Thanyapura Resort, it was also sold to a Thai private family. It was, again, their first investment into hotel. AWC, a subsidiary of TCC, bought Sigma Jomtien and Dusit D2 Chiang Mai. The former was a redevelopment play, while the latter was an acquisition encumbered with Dusit management. What was interesting was the Dusit Princess Chiang Mai that was acquired by a Chinese investor. And we have had a lot of talk about Chinese capital looking at Thai hotels, and this is one of the few events we've seen in terms of Chinese making its way investing in Thailand. Any other portfolio sales, Kunop?
Yeah, like you mentioned at the beginning, Kunpal, there's a couple more, one of which is the Manatai portfolio. So that was a private equity fund out of the US that purchased 3 properties in Thailand through Phuket, Khao Lak, as well as Samui. At the moment, they are currently being rebranded as the Outrigger Resorts, 2 of which has actually opened its doors. I remember looking back now in 2020, it wasn't as active as last year. So how does the 2 compare?
Yeah, last year we had the lowest volume year since 2010, when the market became active again since the global financial crisis. But when you look at 2021, there were 17 transactions, and it was almost 7 times more than the previous year. And that was a pretty active year. If you compare that to the 10-year average, which spanned from 2010 to 2019, it was above the 10-year average by 10%. We also saw the 3 main investment markets, Bangkok, Phuket, and Samui, comprised over 80% of the overall volume.
So, 23 deals, that's a lot. From using all these deals, do you see any value impact or differences in the value between different destinations?
Yes, of course. If we were to divide the volume into 4 groups, Bangkok, Phuket, Samui, and others, Bangkok was able to hold up its value the most, showing only around 0 to 5% price discount from pre-COVID level, except for 1 transaction that was sold by the legal execution department as a distressed sale. So you can see here, the 24%. Phuket only had about 1.5 billion in terms of volume transacted last year. And many these transactions were smaller transactions, and based on our observations, the smaller transactions provided more discounts last year. If Phuket had more strategic asset sales, like what Samui saw, Samui recorded about 5.8 billion baht in hotel transaction, and it had more medium discounts in terms of the 15 to 20%. And outside of these 3 main destinations, in terms of others, about 63% recorded more than 30% discount. In order to understand how to make a deal work during a pandemic, I think it's important to understand the market sentiment and also the dynamics between the buyers and the sellers. So what have we seen in our investor survey, ครับคุณนพ in terms of the survey we sent to our Thai investors?
Sure. I mean, the first thing is that Thai investors are still very keen investing in the market itself. So if you can look here, 75% of our Thai investors actually are looking to invest in the next 12 months. Of course, it's, as you mentioned, it needs to be institutional grade, and going forward, more uplifts for the property. Mostly the investors are probably high net worth corporates as well as PE funds.
And on average, Thai buyers were seeking a discount of around 20%, while sellers were only willing to offer around 5 to 10%. And out of the respondents that we have, about 20 respondents from Thailand, around 50% said that their sources of debt had worsened. And in terms of cap rate, about 1/3 expected that cap rate to remain the same, while 50% said that that cap rate, they anticipated that cap rate would expand up to 1%. The other important factor about the value impact is the time taken in terms of investors factoring into their financial model, because a lot of investors are factoring a longer time period for recovery. And based on our observations, the three most important factors in us trying to make a deal work in a pandemic or a unique situation like this were: one, the ability to tour the asset, and two, the flexibility shown between the buyers and the sellers, whether it's through things like income support, delayed handover, and vendor financing. And third is accessibility to debt. Anything else we may have forgotten?
Well, I think the last thing is probably ESG. I don't think that's something that you can overlook. It's up there with one of the factors that make a deal work. So thank you very much for having us. We'll be around and speak to you guys soon.